Now, as far as the events that unfolded, obviously you have a commercial aircraft that hits the North Tower, and then one that hits the South Tower,
Yes.
and then an aircraft hits the Pentagon,
Yes.
and then another aircraft crashes. This is Flight 93 that you had mentioned before,
Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
and it crashed in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
No known photographs of that. There's photographs of like the shrapnel, the photographs of the plume of smoke.
Yes.
Where do you speculate, if you have any thoughts, as far as to where that was heading to?
Well, I would say it was headed to the Capitol building, and that is because of correspondence between Muhammad Atta and Osama bin Laden that was recovered, in which Osama bin Laden is suggesting, well, it should be the White House. That just, it's the White House. That's the better target. Muhammad Atta is like, well, no, it's too small. You're not going to be able to see it when you're up in the sky. We should go for the Capitol building because you can actually see it when you're up in the sky. And Osama bin Laden is essentially saying something to the effect of, I trust your judgment. So from that, I would conclude it is the Capitol building. And based on stories told, these people aboard Flight 93 saved the lives of, current President Joe Biden, former Vice President Mike Pence. And Joe Biden was arriving in by train and saying to his daughter on the phone, I'm going to, I see the Pentagon on fire. I'm going to the Capitol building. That's the safest in the world. And he's going to get there within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Mike Pence is just leaving the Capitol building and assuming, this airplane will hit the ground and go into it. Absolutely could have killed either of these two guys.
Wow.
And
What a course change of history. I mean, that's crazy.
exactly. And, those of you listening at home, I know you like at least one of those guys.
Yeah, you're split. You're
Yeah.
split. Either way you split it, you're like, oh yeah, that would have been fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild. And you always hear about the heroic "let's roll" moment.
Yeah.
That's one of those that like sticks out. I'm curious. Can you expound on that story?
Well, the PDF says roll it, not let's roll.
Hmm.
I would need to, really hear the audio if that's if the roll it or let's roll. But this gentleman was saying it as he was hanging up the phone. And out of all the movies based on 9/11, I think Paul Greengrass directed United 93, and that is the only one that I think is like a great movie. All others, like, they're okay at telling the story. They're not particularly great. This one is like such a great movie that you'll watch it once and decide you never need to watch it ever again.
Wow.
That's the effect it has on you. And them using the trolley cart to break open the door seems most plausible. Once those phones get hung up, once they go into action, all we know is that they said they were going to do this and that somebody was in the cockpit screaming no before it hit the ground. That's really what we know. As far as what happened in between, it's entirely speculation, but it seems like going for that cart to ram the door uh, is what made the most sense. They also could have bashed against it using their own bodies, but it's unclear.
Hmm.
These men, save the lives of all of our members of Congress potentially, and anybody that works for, people of, for those of you like Congress, that you don't care about them, but like the people that work for Congress, all these people in Washington, D.C., and miraculously, thank God, nobody on the ground was killed. But everybody aboard Flight 93 loses their lives. We go into the morbid stuff on this podcast.
Mhm.
It's one of the witnesses describes seeing a human face hanging from a tree branch as he arrived on the scene. Another man describes seeing a piece of flesh with a Superman tattoo on it, which one of the gentlemen who ran to the front did have a Superman tattoo, the S symbol on his arm. And these are a little, a piece of jaw. And these are the pieces that are found. I understand why people question Flight 93 because other airplanes that crash on the ground, that they're far more intact. But this is because when airplanes crash on the ground, there's usually a pilot at the front trying to land as safely as possible. It's going to land more like this. This is a terrorist trying to destroy the airplane. When on Earth, I would say try to compare it to if there's any any instances of like an airplane going straight down. It went into a sinkhole, but although there's not too many pieces on the ground, roughly 90% of the airplane was recovered um, from this scene. And just about remains of just about every single person from Flight 93 was recovered. As I understand it, all of the missing DNA is from the Trade Center and the two airplanes that hit in the Trade Center. Um, at the Pentagon, I think there's only one person in which no piece of them was ever found, and at Flight 93, I believe DNA of everyone aboard was found. Um, a big question with that is the DNA of the terrorists. You see, just about everyone who died that day has a family member who came forward to give DNA so that it can be cross-referenced to them and we can determine if this is your relative. People who did not come forward are the family members of the terrorists. So when you find a piece of DNA that does not line up with the DNA given by family members, you conclude this must be one of the terrorists.
Hmm.
And they are held in vials at undisclosed locations of the DNA of the terrorists, undisclosed locations located in New York and Virginia. I would assume the FBI headquarters, perhaps, the National Institute of Standards and Technology's headquarters, or one of the alphabet agencies. That's my guess, but it's undisclosed. It amounts to the remains of the terrorists, of which I believe 10 of them have been found. The terrorists at the Pentagon and Flight 93 have been found. Only about 4 terrorist DNAs have been found from the World Trade Center site. And again, it's speculation because they can't match it with anybody else. It amounts to 27 pounds of flesh, which is being contained across all of these terrorists. I don't know if anybody's on like a different system. Like I am 5'10", I weigh 160 pounds. That's what one person, an average person weighs. So just for anyone just using a different system, 27 pounds of flesh across these 10 people. And you don't know which one's which. So they're literally labeled terrorist A, B, C, D, and E.
Wow.
From the Pentagon, terrorist A, B, C, D from Flight 93, etc. I believe it is Muhammad Atta in which his torso was found. And I want to be careful about giving information which is not entirely fresh in my head, but I believe it's because of a birthmark that he had that it was identified this torso must belong to Muhammad Atta.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the reason for keeping all of it is, like, in that way.
Well, it's evidence.
Mhm.
It is evidence in the trial used against KSM. Now, when this trial concludes, family members of the terrorists will have the legal right to request the remains of their family members to be brought home.
Wow.
They will have the legal right to do so, so long as it is evidence in a trial, which it is. And people have to realize that it is evidence in a trial. It's as much as we can say, well, who needs the evidence? We know it was them and everything. It's just not how the justice system works, thankfully. So that's the reason for keeping it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, remarkably heroic from the people on Flight 93. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unthinkable. They sacrificed themselves, and I wonder if they knew it. I wonder if they knew, like, yeah, we're going to take it down. But they were aware of the attacks that had already occurred by
Yes.
that time.
They were able to make phone calls from the airplane, just to clarify to especially the younger people out there. You could make phone calls from airplanes. You had to use your credit card and you would swipe it, and the phone on board would be connected to the main communications of the airplane. The pilot can talk to ground control, and it would essentially use that same technology, and it would cost like an arm and a leg to do it. But they made phone calls. They had heard what was happening in Washington and New York, and they realized they were going to be next.
Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, just harrowing. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, what other moments of heroism throughout the entire event, specifically relating to World Trade Center, stick out to you, and in the time that you give your tours, like which stories, like, or do you find the most moving?